Greta is single-handedly the most inspirational woman I've ever met. But at the same time, she's still just 22 years old. So, should use language like slay.
From the Newsroom at news.com.au.
Yusuf Omar is a journalist who joined hundreds of others, including Greta Thunberg, on a flotilla to deliver humanitarian aid to Gaza in September. He joins me now to tell me all about it. G'day, Yusuf.
How's it going? Good to see you.
Good to see you. To start with, tell me more about the aim of this flotilla and why you wanted to be a part of it.
Humanitarian corridor. So basically, there is about 2 million people in Gaza, and they've had no access to food, medicine, baby formula, just the basics of survival. Soon after October 7th, the Israeli Defense Forces came out on camera. You'll remember there was a press conference, and they said, we're not going to allow food and water and fuel into Gaza. And to be fair to them, they did exactly that. So this mission was saying, hey, you know what? Governments aren't doing anything. International navies are not doing anything. The United Nations not doing anything. Can everyday people get a bunch of old boats, ships, and just do it themselves? Can they literally ship across the Mediterranean and deliver some food to people that need it most? That's what it's all about.
So the flotilla left from Spain at the start of September. There are about 20 vessels in total, more than 350 people on board, including Greta Thunberg, who's just 22 years old. When you first met Greta, what struck you about her? I mean, did anything surprise you?
Greta is single-handedly the most inspirational woman I've ever met.
Wow.
She is just 22 years old, but is incredibly smart, incredibly wise, incredibly articulate. Like, everything that comes out of her mouth, you want to write it down.
Was she as you expected her to be, though, or was something about her surprising?
I think in some ways she's just like a funny mix of like incredibly mature and articulate and a great leader, but at the same time, she's still just 22 years old. So, should use language like slay. And I don't use language like slay because I'm old. But we'll be like, hey, we're arriving on the Tunisian ports in the next 5 hours. And she'll be like, slay. So there's this whole like meme language that Greta has that like I had to very quickly try and learn.
She is arguably the most recognizable activist in the world. I mean, did she have security with her when she was part of this flotilla?
Mate, it's the opposite. She was the security. The whole idea is because this is a very high-risk mission. Remember, in 2010, there was a similar flotilla attempt where a bunch of aid workers from about 30 countries made their way to Gaza because, of course, there has been a siege a long time before October 7th. So there was a previous effort in 2010, a flotilla mission. And in that instance, the Israeli Defense Forces actually boarded the boat and 10 people were shot and killed, 9 on location and 1 later. So it's a very, very high-risk mission. And one of the ways to keep the mission safe is to have high-profile people like Greta Thunberg and maximum international attention and visibility so that it would be too embarrassing, too politically disastrous for something like that to happen again. So in many respects, Greta doesn't have security. She is the security. So being on the vessel makes the vessel safer. And I was so glad to find out that I was on the same boat as her.
I can imagine. What were conditions like on those flotilla boats as you made your way from Spain towards Gaza?
It's awful, man. I mean, there is a bunch of civilians with basically no training, most of them no experience going on a mission like this. You're traveling 3,000 kilometers across the Mediterranean. In my case, vomiting my lungs out. I look like the Exorcist, just like big waves, big winds. You're in the sun for 16 hours a day. Of course, everything that I'm describing is nothing in comparison to what the people of Palestine go through on a daily basis. But the conditions are really nasty. It's really hard. And on top of that, you are continuously fearing for any repercussions that the Israelis might have on these vessels. Are they going to attack the vessels? Are they going to intercept these vessels? And I think it's important to state at this time that what we were doing was not illegal. Like, it is perfectly legal to deliver humanitarian aid to a sieged population. In fact, it's illegal for Israel or anybody to try and stop a mission like that. But yeah, a combination of weather, storms, and just the general fear. Because remember, there's also there's no happy end to a story like this. Like, you're either going to get attacked by the Israeli Defense Force, you're either going to get stopped by them, which is also really scary, or you're going to make it to Gaza, and then you've arrived in what's been described as a genocide. So, like, no matter how this mission goes down, there's only scary outcomes at the end of it. I think that's what makes it so weird, is that you're heading on a journey towards an inevitably dark destination.
Well, let's talk about a terrifying incident that happened about a week and a half into the trip. So some of the flotilla boats were moored off the coast of Tunis, the capital of Tunisia. Tell us what happened next from your point of view, Yusuf.
Yeah, so we took turns to look after the boats. You've got to look after them because there's a chance that they could be sabotaged. And I went out to do like a night shift with about 5 other people. And I went to bed on the top deck at 9 p.m. And at 11 p.m. I heard a massive explosion. Woke up, there was fire all around. The vessel had been hit by a drone, which is now being confirmed by CBS to be an Israeli drone strike, which was deployed from a submarine under direct instruction from Benjamin Netanyahu. Man, I'd never been so scared in my whole life. I was screaming. And you know when you're like in a dream and you scream as loud as you can, but it feels like nothing's coming out? That's the only way I could describe it. Smoke right in front of my eyes. Couldn't even see 2 meters in front of you. The drone had struck right in the front of the vessel, right next to our diesel tanker. And I was terrified that this whole thing was going to catch on fire and explode the entire vessel. I screamed for the crew, managed to wake up the captain and them. They woke up, got fire extinguishers, and were able to put out the fire. Absolutely horrifying. And remember, this was still like over 1,000 kilometers away from Gaza in Tunisian waters. Nothing, none of us expected to be attacked, let alone this far away.
I think it's worthwhile repeating just what you mentioned there. So at first, Tunisian authorities denied it was a drone attack. But as you said, a few weeks ago, 2 American intelligence officials reportedly told CBS News it was a military operation approved by Benjamin Netanyahu with those drones launched from a submarine. I mean, I know a little bit about you, Yusuf. I know you've got a family, you've got a young son. When that attack happened on the boat that you were on, was there a part of you thinking, I shouldn't be on this boat anymore. Like, I can't do this. It's too risky.
When I left home, I left a 2-year-old and a 6-week-old.
Wow.
And leaving was awful. I was a war correspondent in a previous life, and I always said I'd never, ever go back and cover war zones. But the time called for it. We have been protesting for 2 years. We've actively watched what many are calling a genocide live streamed onto our mobile phones. And some of us have made consumer decisions to boycott particular products and services. We've made tons of noise on social media, and this felt like the natural next evolution. The next step is like to take a really direct form of action. Say, hey, I'm not just going to say I care about Palestine and these people. I'm going to do something about it. But obviously being on that boat and when the drone strike happened, yeah, I thought I was never going to see my kids again. And that is absolutely terrifying. And did I feel like I was meant to be there? No, I didn't feel like anybody was meant to be there. Why should we have to do a mission like this? This should never exist. There's no circumstance in which it is acceptable to starve a civilian population of over 2 million people. There's nothing that anyone can tell me that can rationalize that. You can say, oh, but Hamas. I'll be like, yeah, but you're still starving 2 million people. You could be like, oh, but October 7th. I'll be like, yeah, but you're still starving 2 million people. Like, you can't use food as a weapon of war. It's an international war crime. So no, I didn't feel like I should be there. Nobody should be there, but like this was a last resort.
Did you think about, ending it right there and then and going, I've just survived one attack. I can't keep going.
No, the complete opposite happened. I think that all of the activists after that drone strike were more determined. They were, Israel think that by conducting an attack like this, that they scare away the aid workers. And I think this was designed to be a scare tactic. Obviously, like if they wanted to sink the ship, they could easily do it, right? They dropped 2,000-pound bombs on civilian populations in Gaza on a regular basis. This was not an effort to sink the ship. This was an effort to scare people. But that's all they have. They only have aggression and violence and weapons. Whereas we had the rest of the world support, right? We had 44 country delegations. We've got millions of people around the world that are sharing and commenting and creating so much attention and love behind this mission. So it didn't detract. It didn't scare people away at all.
There was so much love for this mission on social media. You shared daily videos from the flotilla. They were very, very popular, millions of views, especially the ones with Greta Thunberg in them. You obviously got to spend a lot of time with Greta. If you were telling a dinner party story about Greta Thunberg, one moment from the voyage that really stuck with you, what would it be?
I mentioned the really bad conditions. On one of the days, the wind was so severe, it actually blew Greta Thunberg's hat into the ocean. And we put out a little post on social media saying, hey, Greta's lost. It's an iconic green frog hat, 2 little ears. Said, Greta's lost her hat. We're heading into Tunis. If anybody's got one, please bring it. And when we arrived in Tunis, there were like thousands of people on the shores because everyone's really passionate about Palestine. But somehow a bunch of families managed to worm their way through the crowds, and all of them were carrying these green frog hats and giving them to Greta. And I don't know where they got them from in Tunis. Like, some of them were from stores, some of them looked like they were handmade or sewn or woven together. And like within like 20 minutes, I just saw Greta with like this mountain of like green frog hats. Like, people were just slapping them onto her head, and she had like too many to know what to do with it. In fact, she gave me one of them. And like, that's a cute story for me because it really speaks to global solidarity. It speaks to like a cute little small thing like, oh, I've lost my hat, can anybody help me? And then random people coming together to help and to do the right thing and to support each other. And that's almost like a metaphor for the flotilla in itself, right? The majority of the people that were on that mission were not like Arab, or they were not Muslim. They were from all over the world, Brazilians, Chileans, and they've got no skin in the game. They're not connected to this like Palestine story. They're not religiously or ethnically linked to it. They're just fellow human beings. They're like, wow, this is pretty messed up what's going on. And imagine if we lose that. Imagine if we enter a world where we stop caring about each other, where we're like, not my problem. Like, somebody else will deal with that. I wouldn't want to live in that world. I wouldn't want my kids to grow up in that world. Because we are naive if we think that like our stable lives are always going to continue that way, especially at the way that the world is evolving and politics is changing. Like, it's the children of Gaza today. It could be our children tomorrow. And I'd hope that people on the other side of the world would do the same for us.
Your time as part of the flotilla came to an end mid-September before they made it near Gaza. You had a pretty tearful farewell with all the other participants before they continued the journey. What happened there? How come you stopped on this mission?
Yeah, I didn't want to stop. I mean, I was really upset and I was really passionate about this mission. There was a feeling that basically we had too much attention on our video content. As you said, we were really gaining a lot of traction and bringing a lot of eyeballs to the mission. And we were trying to do that because visibility was effectively a form of defense. The more attention we could bring, the less likely we felt Israel were to sabotage this mission. But at the same time, you don't want to detract away from the actual story, which is Gaza, right? Which is millions of people that are being actively bombed on a daily basis, people that are being starved. And there was a feeling that all the attention had now shifted surely to the flotilla and away from the genocide itself. So some members of the kind of flotilla made a decision that it was better for Scene TV and Yusuf Omar to work from land and refocus our efforts and energy on covering Gaza itself.
So the flotilla arrived near Gaza in early October. They were about 110 kilometres off the coast of Gaza when they were intercepted in international waters by Israeli forces, who then boarded the boats and detained those on board. What have people who you became friends with on the flotilla told you about that day? Because it must have been pretty scary for them.
It was horrendous. I mean, there was CCTV footage live streamed showing the Israelis spraying what they call skunk water, which is like this kind of water that makes you want to vomit onto the vessels. The participants were arrested, and I must emphasize, illegally. It is illegal to stop. We should say illegal interception, not just an interception. They were effectively bound their hands. They were left for 6 hours in a kneeling position. They were taken out to what Israel call a terrorist prison, several hours into the desert. They were held for multiple days. There were reports of torture of various forms. There was reports that they were made to drink water from the toilets. There was a murky water. People that had heart conditions weren't given access to their medication.
You mentioned reports there. Have you been able to actually chat to any of the flotilla participants who were held by Israel after they boarded those ships, or are you just getting your information from the reports?
Yeah, no, I've had regular correspondence with people that were on my boat.
Now, there's a video I want to ask you about just quickly that shows flotilla participants throwing their phones overboard as the Israeli forces intercepted them. Can you explain that for us? Why did they ditch their phones?
Yeah, throwing the phones overboard is a controversial one in some respects, and there was a lot of discussions about how it could be perceived negatively, but there's a really important reason why. Obviously, when creating a flotilla mission of this nature, there's a lot of correspondence and communication that happens between various people, both on the vessel and off the vessel, and it's really important to keep that messaging from the Israelis effectively, right? You don't want to compromise the communications channels that you're in, especially if you're planning to launch future missions. I think the other side, and I'll say this on a personal level, I mean, you remember less than 12 months ago, Israel deployed the pager attack in Lebanon, where a bunch of pagers were booby-trapped with explosives distributed to people across Lebanon, and then they were exploded at a coordinated time. And you saw so many people praise that as like, hey, this is such a great tactical attack. But the reality is people were in cars with family members and grocery stores, and like there were tons and tons of civilians that were either lost their lives or were maimed for the rest of their lives. And to be honest, going back to the phones being thrown overboard, I don't know if I'd want my phone back from the Israeli Defense Forces. Like if they had access to my phone for a day or two, they almost certainly, I'd imagine, could bug it. I don't know if the rest of my phone calls for the rest of my life would be secure, but it could be something way worse. So I think for various reasons, they've made the decision to kind of lose the devices.
So the Israeli forces detained more than 440 people who were part of the flotilla, including Greta Thunberg. They were taken to a prison in Israel for a few days, as you mentioned. They were then released and flown out of the country. Have you spoken to Greta about her experience and what happened in those few days that she was locked up?
I haven't spoken to Greta yet. I think they went through such a horrendous ordeal. I mean, we've had reports of Greta being made to kneel on an Israeli flag or something along those lines. I think I'm trying to give her a space for now, but I definitely will get in touch with her and get a better understanding of what happened.
So do you feel like the flotilla was a success, even though it didn't make it to Gaza?
Look, even if the flotilla made it, it was still going to be a drop in the ocean of how much aid is actually required for 2 million people that are being deliberately starved to death. I think the most important success, and it really is a huge one, is that it educated millions of people around the world that a siege was even happening. I had so many people that messaged and said, hey, I had no idea that they weren't getting access to food, water, and medicine. That's pretty messed up. We should talk about that. And I think that is an enormous victory. Also, I mean, it represents hope. At a time where we've watched like rubble and amputated children for 2 years and starvation, like it tells people, wow, we can take matters into our own hands. If we are unhappy or disgusted by the response of our international governments, what's stopping us doing things ourselves right now?
So we're recording this interview on October 14. We've seen the ceasefire come into effect. A peace deal is still being worked out. How confident are you, Yusuf, that this war between Israel and Palestine is over for good?
It's definitely not, because there's a misconception that there was a ceasefire before October 7th. On October 6th, Palestinians were killed. On October 5th, Palestinians were killed. This is a 77-year occupation, and there will continue to be violence until we address the root cause, and that is apartheid, a system where one ethnicity has superiority legally over another. So long as you have people that are in what has been described by human rights organizations as the world's largest open-air prison, where Gaza is not allowed its own port, it's not allowed its own airport, it's not allowed access to basic things like if you have a look at the list of banned products, it includes wedding dresses. As long as you have a subjugated people that are contained within walls and are deprived access to all the things that everyone else around the world enjoys, freedom of movement, for example, there is going to continue to be conflict. So I think the conversation now, no, unfortunately, the ceasefire is not going to hold, and it never will. And it's almost this difference between peace and justice. You can have a peaceful prison if you have enough guards, right? But does that equal justice? Absolutely not. And until there's justice, I don't think there'll be a ceasefire.
Well, Yusuf, thank you so much for sharing the journey of the flotilla with us. It was amazing to follow it on social media, and thank you for talking today to news.com.au.
Thank you so much. Good seeing you.
Follow or subscribe to From the Newsroom wherever you get your podcasts.